Welcome to the Driftwood Podcast. I'm Daniel the Wizard, and this is David.
Hi there.
Boy, am I excited about this one. Tell them what we got today, David. What are we talking about?
We're going to talk about guns. That's a little too excited for a serious subject, so we're going to do guns.
We're going to talk about guns and gun control, maybe. Actually, yeah, we're going to talk about gun control.
You're going to
How do you control the weapon?
Right.
Anyway, so basically, we're going to start off by giving our background with guns and how we view them. And then we'll get into the discussion of what's real popular, gun control.
Got to keep the people happy.
So, David, if you would like to start, what's your background on guns? What
Right.
do you did not grow up in the States, did you?
Not after the age of 5, and obviously I was too young to have a firearm at that time.
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I don't remember having one.
Wait, where were you living at? You may not have been too young.
Right. Yeah, and my dad was in the military, so, I mean, he was definitely involved with guns. Um, After we left the States and moved to Germany, a whole different situation. My mother was very anti-gun to the point where, as a kid, if I would pick up a stick to use as a gun, that would have some serious consequences.
Don't you be pretend shooting people with that pretend gun.
Exactly.
Because then you'll do it in real life.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's supposed to be the psychology behind it, or the argument anyway.
That's the argument about it. Yeah. If you keep them away from it, they won't be affected by it.
I'm gonna adjust my mic real quick. Keep going.
And yeah, so no, and then living in Germany, police officers carry guns
So, at what age were you living in Germany? What age range were you?
between 5 and 10 approximately.
Okay, all right. So, I think it's important. The reason why I asked that is because you're talking about pivotal times in your life and the
Right.
transition from one social climate to another.
Exactly, very different. Obviously, I didn't really have a clear idea of what the U.S. Mentality or like take on it is.
Right, but guns were fairly common. It wasn't like this thing that was a taboo subject, if you will,
Right,
up until the point of 5.
right,
Okay.
right, and then yeah. So in Germany, firearms are available and people do own them, but it's not the same level, I would say, as over here in the States. As I said, police officers are armed with sidearms. But apart from that, you'd have to go really to a gun club specifically to shoot, or go hunting to shoot. I mean, that's generally how it is everywhere. You don't just go around shooting, but what I'm trying to get at is it's much more kind of isolated or exclusive.
It's
maybe?
not as widely accepted. Like, just the commoner
Right.
wouldn't own a firearm. You had to be part of one of these clubs or groups.
Right. You'd have to have kind of a legitimate reason for having it. You wouldn't
Right.
just own firearms.
Right. There has to be a justifiable reason for owning it other than the fact that a piece of paper says I can.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And then leaving Germany at the age of about 10, 11, moving to the UK, where Queen's rules. There's again, firearms are not illegal, but again, it's not something that ordinary people would just own. Again, I don't know. I'm not going to get into legalities because I'm not sure about it, but just how they're treated in society. People who would have guns would be people who are hunting criminals, not hunting criminals. Sorry, people who are hunting, and people who are criminals. That would be kind of like the perception of, and military, of course. That would be the British perception about who's using firearms, guns, rifles, pistols, whatever. Having said that, the British police, when I first moved over to the UK, they did not carry sidearms. And it's only in my opinion, a fairly recent addition to their gear is sidearms and sometimes even submachine guns. But it's still kind of rare to see British police armed. It's more high profile targets, political environments, like House of Lords, you know, important government buildings.
Right.
It's more security as rather than it's more the value of the thing that requires it to have a higher level of response capability.
Right. Okay. All right.
So yeah, and then moved to the US a few years back, and you know,
So you were well into adulthood when you moved to the
dude,
U.S.
I was in my 30s.
Right. Okay. So you spent the bulk of your time in the UK. Would that be fair?
The majority of my life, yes.
Yeah. So a lot of your base, I guess I don't want to say morals, but how you feel about guns was initially developed then. When did it, like, how did you feel about it going through that? Like, when you were there, what was your view on guns? Like, when you were growing up and the evolution of it? Because I know you, like you said, up until 5, it wasn't really a taboo thing. Then your mother was like so against like guns, even the idea of a weapon.
Yeah,
like
not
that.
even as a toy.
Right. So it was just super, super like
Dude,
oppressed, if you will.
I've been through gun control. Like, if I had a Lego set and they had guns, if they were cowboys, those guns disappeared. Those Lego cowboys didn't have guns anymore. I'm serious. They all had spears because spears aren't a firearm, and the Indians had spears, so I
Okay.
gave the cowboys spears.
Right. Okay. Gave the Cowboys spears.
You got to even
Even yeah.
playing
and-
field, right?
right. But except the Cowboys don't climb trees. I don't know. I think there's something to that.
Uh,
Anyhow, so
cactus.
your cactus, right? So your progression. So did you think that was wrong growing up, or did you had any idea that was? Did you just think that that's just the way that it was?
As far as guns being taboo,
Yes.
um, yes and no, both. I mean, it's. I grew up as that's the standard. Like, again, this comes a lot from from the Christian background of,
Right.
of non-violence, no war, you know, love rather than, you know, all that. So yeah, I guess my initial perception was that guns are death devices that we should keep away from.
Okay.
I guess it would be fair to say.
So I mean, you just felt that, right? It was just, it was guided.
It was drilled into me, you
Right.
know? I mean, when you get harsh physical punishment for pretending to have a stick gun, it leaves an imprint on you.
Do you remember the first time that you held a firearm? Like, with the mindset that you had of this is bad?
No, I think by the time I held a firearm, I'd gotten way past that.
Okay.
I mean, the first time I held anything resembling a firearm was my friend's air rifle, and I nearly shot his foot off. No, he wouldn't have shot it off, but I did have. I was lacking trigger control.
Let me just
I
tell-
wasn't trained.
We used to mess with people. We would take the BB gun while they were asleep, and if
Uh-huh.
they were wearing shoes, shoot it through the bottom of their shoe. Yeah. So listen, boys are reckless. Okay.
Right.
Do not give children BB guns.
We were just, you know,
As toys.
like 12, 13, running around in the woods with this, you know, hiding from the police, because
Oh, I did some
you know,
stuff.
That's the British, you know, as soon as they see someone with a rifle, it's like, call the police.
Right.
That's
Okay. Yeah.
fair
Oh,
enough.
because it stands out.
Yes.
Super
Yeah.
stands out because it's not socially accepted to just own it.
And when I say the woods, it was like a little stand of trees in the middle of the neighborhood. And we were running around in there shooting squirrels. So, yeah.
You know, slingshots are pretty effective for that as well.
I've taken a squirrel out with a brick. I'm not lying. I threw this brick, it hit the squirrel, hit the ground. Thought, yes. Got up and ran straight up the tree. I was like, son of a bitch. Should have used a firearm.
All right, so I guess it's fair for me to give my background on firearms. So I grew up in East Texas.
Uh-huh.
In East Texas,
Gun Central?
Cheyenne just walked in, so just in case she says something, I want to make sure that you want to say hello, babe.
Hi guys.
Okay, so I grew up in East Texas, and it's very heavily wooded, right? So there's a lot of hunting.
Right.
There's a lot of planking. I mean, there's not a whole lot of stuff to do, right? So
Right.
target shooting, things like that, are something that, you know, it's a social thing also, right? You know, get a group of guys together, they go out, shoot clays
Right,
or
right.
whatever, right? So
A recreational.
as long as I can remember, I've known how to work a firearm.
Right. Now, is that some? Can I ask real quick? Is that something that you just picked up because you were around it, or did someone actually sit down with you and specifically like run you
It
through
was
safety and
ran through
loading?
safety. It was something that in my house it was very important because gun safety.
Right.
Everyone that I knew had weapons.
Right.
Everyone guns. I say weapons, but I mean they were guns, right?
I mean, anything can be a weapon in the wrong
Right.
hands, right
So
hands.
yeah.
Whatever.
So they had firearms. They had guns. Right. So and some of the people were just avid collectors. They loved the idea of a gun. Right.
Right.
Some of them wouldn't even fire the guns. They just had them because they were collectors of guns. Right.
Right. So
If
to
some,
look at and enjoy,
but yeah. Right. So I was around a lot of people like that. So my dad was someone that would like, oh, cool, let me buy another gun. Let me buy another gun, right? So my dad amassed quite a collection of guns, right? I don't have a large collection of guns like that. It's not something that I have a thrill in that way.
I think just on your dad's like behalf, we should just mention that he lost them all in a boating accident.
No, no, he didn't. But he has gotten.
If the government comes, he did.
He has gotten rid of some over time, things like that, through trades and so on and so forth, and whatever whatever he chooses to do with them is his prerogative,
Right.
Current status. But anyways, I grew up in an environment to where guns were part of the culture.
Right.
It was very much a part of it. It was actually odd to find someone that didn't know how to use a weapon more than it would be, or use a firearm more than it would be to find someone that did.
And this is where you lived and grew up.
Yes.
In the general area.
Yeah, up until I was 20 years old. I lived in that area, and then I skedaddled, right? So, but I lived around there, so I grew up hunting. Right. I grew up target shooting. I grew up doing all of that stuff. I mean, we would go squirrel hunting with a 22, right? Shoot squirrels, but everything that we shot, we ate. I was also taught, do not kill anything unless you plan on eating it, right? It can't be taken as a trophy per se. That can't be the cause. Now, that can be a side item, right? That can be maybe glorification to some point for some people, but if you take something, it's more of a memento of like, this was a time and the story that comes with it.
Is it really? I mean, is it not? I mean, for me, I would have thought it goes much more basic than that. Like, it's achievement. It's what you've bagged. It's like when you're fishing,
it's bragging.
When you catch a certain weight of fish, it's not just the size of it and the challenge, but what you've actually got out of it. If you have a 3-pound fish, you can eat. But if you have a 6-pound fish, you can eat twice.
And it's very rewarding, right? It's a way to relive that moment, right? So again, that was ingrained in me. That was the culture that I grew up in, right?
So you got like little squirrels on the.
But let me be clear. I actually didn't use a handgun for quite a while. It was all rifle, right? Okay. So because like as a younger child, I was very light. I was small, right? So I couldn't necessarily hold up a gun, right? But on a shooting table or something like that, or out of a a deer stand or something like that, trying to hunt, I didn't necessarily have to raise it up, right? It was on a rest or a prop, or a tripod or something like that. So, but yeah, I've been out in the woods hunting. I've used guns. And also, let me just say that my children are familiar with guns as well. All of them that are over the age of 5 have fired a firearm of some sort, right? They all get, my dad actually gets them their first BB gun, right? That's his thing. He buys them their first BB gun. So again, it's still part of the culture sort of, right? But we do also go outdoors and stuff like that, but it's not something that just, they know what they are and they're not curious about it, right? They like them, stuff like that. And if we get an opportunity for them to fire, I'll let them. But they understand before they have to tell me like what each part of the gun does. Nice. If they don't know what it does, they can't fire it.
Right, nice.
You have to know what the trigger does. You have to know what the hammer does, if there's a hammer on it, safety, so on and so forth. So again, culturally, it was ingrained in me, right? So I've never not had a firearm, never. Right. In my knowing of existence, I've never not had one, whether it be an air rifle, because in some cases I mean, it is deadly, right?
Yes.
A
Yes.
pellet rifle, I mean, you get 1,250 feet per second out of a pellet rifle, man.
Right.
You can kill stuff with that, right?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, throughout my life, I've always had one. So, and then also I was licensed to carry one for a job, for doing security things like that. So, I mean, I have a vast background with it always being part of my culture. So, I take it personal with gun control.
Well, so far you've kind of covered almost like the counter the counter argument to gun control. One of them is, well, what about hunting? So you kind of like definitely grounded your familiarity with handguns in like the hunting side of it. But what about outside of that like sphere? Like, would people use guns where you grew up as self-defense
Oh,
measures?
absolutely.
As I mean,
Absolutely. So you growing up in hunting as a culture, whatever. Yes, you do have a vast selection to do that with, right? But some of those also double over, right? But you also have purchases specific for home protection, right?
right.
So you're not going to take something. You're not going to take a short nose shotgun hunting. It's not accurate.
Right.
It's not. It's not. You don't. You want something that has range on it, right? And the reason for a short nose shotgun is in close quarters.
Right, well, you don't have room to move the barrel
Yeah,
around.
right. Just kind of point and shoot, right, if you will. So that is more of a combat home defense type of situation. So that's a purchase specific for that, right? So people that have a lot of firearms, some of them have one gun for one reason, right? So they may have a high caliber rifle just to go hunt in the mountains when they go once a year. Right? Or once every 4 years, they have a gun for that, right? So that's not going to be the same gun that you use in a heavily brushy area, right? So even if you don't do it all the time, you want to have a tool capable of doing that.
That's essentially what I hear you saying is you want the right tool for the right
Right.
job.
And essentially in the way that I grew up, it was a tool, right? But growing up, you heard of gun deaths and things like that. They were locally. They happened, right? You still had some gang stuff. You still had, the stuff that goes in, urban areas with crime and things like that. So you still have those things that go on. So part of that does exist because of that culture that exists there.
What about like accidental deaths or suicides, like where there's no perpetrator as such?
Well, I think so. Suicide is something that you can do with whatever you have available to you, right?
A bathtub and a razor.
But that's pretty quick and thoughtless way to
Definitely messy.
try. But you're again. I think in that mindset, the goal isn't worried about the mess. It's just effectiveness, right?
Right.
That's the goal, effectiveness, right? So when you have something like that, you can't, again, all the people that I grew up around, you heard of suicides, things like that, but never really how the suicide happened, just that it did. Right. So it wasn't like talked about necessarily. It was more of a taboo. Like, let's not talk about them taking their life.
Right. So you just generally didn't talk about it.
Right. It wasn't, it never became part of the conversation because it wasn't relevant. You're not worried about how they did it.
It's the fact they did do it.
It's just the fact that they did, and now you're dealing with the loss of that person or whatever your relationship was to that person, right? You're not worried about how they did it, right? And your first thought isn't like, oh, if mine anyways, isn't, oh, if they just didn't have whatever was accessible. No, because I've been in a mindset to where I thought that was the best option, right? It doesn't matter what you have available. You make the decisions on what's available. So if a gun's not available, you're going to do exhaust fumes, or you're going to, close off a room and fill it with gas, or
whatever the most you can reach
yes,
to.
You know what I'm saying? It doesn't. The gun is irrelevant in that situation. It's again just something people use as a tool, right? I don't mean to sound barbaric in it, but that's essentially what it is, right? Is it, have guns done evil things themselves? No, but have they been used for evil? Absolutely, right? They've been used to do things. They've been used to do the mass shootings. They've been used to oppress people, right? They've been used in a multitude of ways,
Right.
right? Is that what they were designed for? In some instances, yes, right?
Well, I mean, fire. Are you talking about what firearms are designed for in general, or
Yes, in general. Just the overall necessity of it and being able to.
well, I mean,
Let me take that back.
in all
I don't mean,
fairness,
actually, I don't mean what I just said. Let me take that back. I don't think that it was. It essentially developed, I believe, more as a hunting thing. I'm probably wrong. I don't know. It might be a war thing. I'm not sure.
my impression is that it came out of war. That it essentially, the Chinese had been using gunpowder for a long, long time before it got introduced to Europe. And although they didn't have bullets, they did have
Projectiles. They had
They had
projectiles.
projectiles, arrows on the end of fireworks, basically.
Yeah,
Rockets.
a bottle rocket with an arrow or tip on
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
I mean, highly effective when that thing comes flying. But as far as then it had been introduced in Europe, and I'm trying to think of like period costumes, what they wore, and how it went from mail or knightly armor, plate armor, where they have swords and such, and then when the firearms started introducing, they stopped wearing armor because the armor didn't do anything against firearms,
Right.
and that then changed basically how wars were fought.
It's a constant evolution.
Sure.
Like it's a constant evolution. So think about it like sports, right? So if you have a football team that develops an offense that's effective,
Right.
they're winning games.
Right. Exactly.
So somebody designs a defense effective, specific against that offense, because guess what? Now everybody's copying that offense. So now you have to have a defense that stops it.
Right.
Well, once that happens, then you have the defense winning, right? But then somebody develops another offense. So it's a constant development.
Right.
And sometimes things go backwards. Let me try something old, right?
Sure.
And, so like with guns and things like that, I think it was an evolution of like, okay, cool, your armor. Okay, well, I'm going to make something that's going to pierce that armor, right? All right, cool. So like now you have something else. Well, I'm going to make something else, right? So the higher caliber, the longer range, the advancement of technology also adds to that.
What I find interesting about that is that really, as you pointed out, it's an evolution. The fact that really a gun is just a projectile thrower. I mean, if you boil it down to the very, very basics of what it does, it takes an object, a projectile, and throws it, which is what a bow and arrow is. What is it? Atlatl. Those like throwing sticks.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
One stick with a hook, and you throw it. I mean, this is something that's been around since we learned to use sticks. We would find a better and better way of throwing that stick at whatever we're trying to throw it at.
Right. Yeah. So in a sense, hunting or war or
Exactly,
whatever.
Exactly.
Whatever.
So I didn't want to like say it's purely a war thing. I think it's a general evolution of a concept.
All right. So we're talking about how we grew up differently and how things were. I'm sorry, my mic keeps. Keep moving my mic, so I apologize to anybody that I'm making constant noise to. It's not on purpose. But anyway, so the reason and the need for guns in the States would be different socially other places. I mean, again, we do have probably the most lax gun laws as far as a society goes.
Right.
I would think, right? But they do differ state by state also. Texas is a very
liberal.
No.
Gun liberal.
Gun liberal, yes. It's a more of a Republican state.
Yes.
Well,
so for the time being.
but you also have to think about how much rural area there is to Texas. That's what you have to evaluate. It's not the highly densely populated areas. It's the vast area of rural towns.
300 feral hogs is not a meme. That shit is real, and they kill people. I
No,
loved that when that came out. That,
Yeah.
you know, and I want to eventually get into like the counter arguments against guns, because that is one of them. It's like, why, like the main, I think, argument is like, why would you need that?
Oh, I got some good arguments, I think.
They skip past the, well, it's something I want and there's no reason I shouldn't have it. They go to, why would you need that? And I think that illustrates a kind of a disconnect in how they
It
relate
makes somebody
to,
have to defend it, right? You don't want to come up putting somebody on the defense off the jump.
well, yeah, that's
Why should you approach that question that way? I think that's an improper way to approach that question. Anyone out here listening that wants to approach that question, please don't say, why do you need that? Because you're already putting them on the defense to try and explain themselves.
And the thing is it's kind of a pointless question when you're trying to address the overall need for guns by asking one person, why do you need it? Well, that might not be the same reason that somebody else needs it or wants it or how they use it. So it's kind of it's like a red herring almost.
Right. So I wanted to ask, why is it treated different in different cultures? Like, why is it treated differently here than it is in the UK or Germany? Or doesn't Australia have very strict
They
gun laws?
didn't, but
Now they do.
Last year or the year before, very recently, they introduced a ban, and I haven't got the statistics in front of me, but the number of home invasions, the number of deaths by firearm, number of violent crimes all increased immediately afterwards, dramatically.
But over time, though.
Sure, it didn't go up overnight, but once people caught on that people don't have firearms with which to defend themselves in their homes, it became much easier for the
Oh yeah,
criminals.
for the people that were like, oh shit, yeah, easy pickings,
Right.
right.
I still got my guns.
Well, listen, there's that's the thing too, that about if you make it to where it's known what you have in some sense, that sense of like surprise, you don't know what's going to be behind that door is gone. So that makes you more of a target.
Yeah, I mean, the only way you could probably make that worse is by putting a big sign on your front door saying this is a gun-free zone.
Well,
You know, it's like an open invite.
that
telling
reminds
every
me,
gun to come.
you know those burglary signs that people have out in their like planters in their yard and stuff like that, saying this home is protected by
by
whatever,
by
right?
DDT or something.
I actually think that's a really bad idea,
Why so?
because you're basically telling them this is the service that I have. So
Oh yeah, okay.
you're just like, okay, cool, here's the service, right? So you know I have an alarm, right? So now you know what type of alarm that I got, or at least what company. So now you can do a little bit of research. And if you really want to get in there,
So you're announcing your defense plan to anyone
yes,
who wants
I
to
think it's a
attack.
poor defense plan, right?
Yeah,
Whereas if you leave them guessing,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? If they don't know if there's an alarm there, are they more or less willing to try it? I guess it depends on the criminal, but I think overall, I think it's the risk reward benefit,
Yeah, definitely.
right? There's way more risk because there's more variables you cannot account for.
Unknown variables.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So anyone that has those signs in your yard, I'm not an expert, so unless I just don't think it's a good idea. So maybe reconsider it. Excuse me. But anyway, so why do you think it's treated different in different cultures?
So yeah, you brought up Australia, which is kind of an odd one out, I think.
Well, I thought the reason why I brought up Australia is because my first thought was it is because of the age of the country or the social country. But then I was like, but
Right.
Australia's really young.
Yes, as a country, as
Right.
a nation.
Yeah. They became a country 1901.
Yeah. So what? Like 200 years? What? No, not 100 years?
It's only been
Shit.
120 years, bro. 119 years to be exact.
Holy shit!
January 1st, 1901 is when they became a country.
Damn, that's younger than the United States.
Very much so.
So that's where you were going with that. Maybe it's because of younger countries.
Right. But
What
that
about Canada then? What's the
Canada's a
situation in
younger
Canada?
country too, isn't it?
Sure. Probably even younger than the United States.
I think they are younger than the United
As
States.
far as
Just
how it
being a separate entity from, I don't know, whatever they
Because
were.
you had Quebec and you had whatever the other
I don't know. I
parts.
don't know much about Canada.
Right.
All I
It's
know is there's a
America's
lot
hat.
of. I know there's a lot of snow, and they play hacky up there.
Right, man.
So there's actually a show that I was turned on to by someone. It's pretty funny. It's some Canadian comedy. It's pretty good.
Oh yeah.
I think it's
Canadians got jokes.
oh, it's dry humor though, super dry.
Cool. Well, I'll tell you what. Just on a little tangent, I've just got to pay homage to her because, okay, so I was living in London. And this is like early 2000s, 2002, three, maybe something like that. I was working Tower Records, and there was this chick that worked there, and she had an American accent, and so people would like ask her, "Where in the States are you from?" And I tell you what, it is glorious to watch her explode every time, screaming about she's not American, she's Canadian. I'm not American, I'm Canadian. It was awesome.
I guess if she'd have said it with a French accent, she could have been Louisiana.
Right. But yeah. Anyway, that was just a little tangent about how Canadians kind of get upset about being thought of as Americans, even so they kind of are.
Anyway, so
But yeah, so it's handled in different countries. Here, I have a little bit of a hypothesis about that. A lot of countries in the world were previously owned, colonized by the UK. Now, if you think about how American independence came about and everything, wasn't there a lot to do with like firearm control from the British?
I think that was part of it. I think religious freedom had a lot to do with it too.
Sure.
I think.
Well, that was initially the reason for people coming here,
Right, for the-
apparently. Although I've heard some interesting things about that. We'll get into that some other time.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, so I think I don't know. There's so much area in the United States. There's just a lot of area, right? So I think this is where Australia may have messed up. Again, I guess the long-term numbers, I don't really know what they are. I guess I can pull them up in just a second. But I think you create a void, right? You have to, if you want it to change culturally, you have to start young, right? You can't just ban guns, right?
Right.
But I actually, when we get into the counter arguments and the pros and cons, things like that, I actually have an argument for what I think the actual answer is.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Instead of gun control, I think I have a pretty viable solution. It probably has some kinks that need to be worked out, but I think overall the gist of it may be pretty solid. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But so as far as the cultures around guns and things like that, you have a lot of criticism externally of the United States on their gun policies, right? So you also have to understand too that me spouting the Second Amendment, things like that, or whatever, that's not my first like defense on it or whatever. But I think that I deserve the right to make that decision on my own, on whether I have guns in my house or not.
Right.
Right. And I don't think it's anybody's business what I have in my house, because it is my house, my property that I paid for. Right. I already give you a little bit by paying you taxes. I already give you a little bit by, reporting certain things about my property and allowing you to evaluate it based upon and charge me taxes based on what you think it's worth. Right.
So would you extend that to anything? You should be allowed to have anything in your home, like, I don't know. Let's get ridiculous here. Like, I don't know. Like pygmy elephants. You should be allowed to keep pygmy elephants in your house. What about like nuclear fusion generator?
I think as long as it is not of detriment to
people outside of your home.
People outside. Actually,
sorry, kids.
As long as it's not a detriment
to
anyone.
Right.
Right? Because let's be clear. A safely kept firearm is a danger to no one.
Right. Yeah, because guns don't grow legs and get up and shoot people by themselves.
A safely kept firearm will not hurt anyone.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it's just as simple as that.
Right.
And again, it goes back to if I want to do something in my home, it's not affecting anyone externally, it's not harming my children, it's not harming anyone else. right? Let's say if I want to drink a beer. If I want to drink a beer sitting on the couch watching the basketball game. Right? If I want to drink a beer, it's my prerogative, right? I went ahead and I played your little game. I paid your taxes on it. I did all that stuff and so on and so forth, right? I followed your rules. So now I get to drink my beer.
Right.
Right.
You've jumped through the hoops and now you can sit down and enjoy it.
But I can brew my own beer, but I cannot sell it. I cannot profit off of it unless I have licensing and regulation and stuff like that, right? So, but I can give it away for free.
Right, sure you can.
I just can't profit off of it, right?
Right.
So, you have to play the pony. The what is it? The dog and pony show? Is that the expression?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Do the dog and pony show. You do all the things they want, and that's what we have to do to drink a beer. So, right. Do you want to jump through all of those hoops constantly to be allotted the opportunity to own a firearm?
So, what are you saying?
Do you want to have to jump through all of those hoops as we do to buy alcohol, for example, to buy a firearm?
Well, I mean, there's not that many hoops with alcohol. I mean, you pay the tax, you show that you're of age, legal age, and that's pretty much it.
Right.
As long as you don't get caught with it anywhere you shouldn't be, there's no problems.
But let's say you decided you just wanted to make your own gun.
You can. You can make your own gun. It's completely legal.
Right. But isn't there rules on selling it?
Oh, yeah, no, you can't sell it.
Exactly. It's basically my point being, when you give control to external people to dictate what we can and cannot do,
Right.
you have to follow their rules to be able to do something so simple as enjoy a beverage in your home.
Right.
And it goes to my argument is freedom, right? It's the freedom, it's the ability to have it. And I think that's the principle on what people argue the Second Amendment. Right? Listen, it's antiquated, it's old,
I don't think so, man. I don't think so. Listen, I'm not a constitutional scholar like Barack Obama, but I don't know why I always bring him up. I must have a thing for him, or I really hate him, one or the other.
Continue on. We've discussed the Obamas in the first
I know,
episode. I don't want
get back onto the hot dollars. Hi, Cheyenne. Yeah, so the more I look at it, the more I think it was actually a very, very cleverly constructed piece of legislative document. Because I think... Okay. So, the Second Amendment basically addresses the issue that for a government to be held in check, there needs to be a certain level of self-empowerment by the citizens, right? So it's basically what it's talking about is a balance of power between the rulers and the ruled, even so we are technically the government represents, but whatever. Am I incorrect?
No, you're correct.
It's all about maintaining balance between,
Right. So the Second Amendment, all of that stuff, the whole Constitution, everything is a list of compromises.
Okay. Yeah.
So everything with the Declaration of Independence and stuff like that, the Constitution, everything, the history of it, it's compromise after compromise to get everyone on board. Right. So there was, I have in front of me right here, let me see. It is the Constitution of the United States of America with the Declaration of Independence, right? I bought it at Barnes and Noble sometime back, I guess, maybe a couple months ago. I don't remember. But anyways, I haven't fully gone through it, let me be honest, but I've read quite a ways through it. And basically what it breaks down in the beginning is, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's literally just compromises, one compromise after another to get one group of people to show up so that way it could be uniform. Right?
That was my understanding originally, that the document was the best they could make in order to include everyone.
Right.
So
right. That was...
It didn't address any single person's or group's ideal preferences. but it made it workable for the maximum number of.
And they made it general enough
You're right.
to withstand time.
Right.
Right? It looks like to me, I'm not a scholar either, just the way that some of the stuff was written
Right.
was with the intent on it changing in the future
Right.
from how it currently was.
Okay.
Right? So the verbiage and the use of certain things makes it seem like there was some forethought into it. Like there was, okay, long term, how does this
Right.
become
Right.
effectiveness? Because what's tyranny? You know, absolute power,
Right.
stuff like that. You know, you want to avoid that. You want to eliminate all the power being centralized.
Right.
Right. So that's where I have a problem with big government. But you don't want it centralized. You want each group of people to govern their own group of people. Right. So what's in the best interest of the individual group may not be in the best interest of the whole. Right. So why are you going to control guns for a city like New York City, which is a urban area, the same way that you would a rural area?
So you're saying that
You can't make laws federally based on one area.
okay, so you're saying like the gun ban in Chicago and everything that's necessary, that
I don't necessarily think it's
or
necessary.
appropriate because it's an urban
I
environment?
think they made that decision based on their environment, though I really hope that they recognize that it's backfired at some point.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when people talk about Chicago, things like that, I immediately jump to gangs, right? My experience in Chicago, I've never spent any time there of any significance. I've been to Illinois, and what you think of Chicago is not the rest of Illinois.
Right. So I just want to address the point you said, like you wouldn't have the same regulations in urban.
Well, what I'm saying
versus-
is like the idea of gun control,
Right.
federally instituting gun control for everyone,
right, all states across
everything, right? That's too much control from someone up top that has no clue what's going on
Right. Yeah.
in East Texas.
Back to the feral hogs thing.
Right. They have no clue what's going on. Do you think the president's thinking about feral hogs?
Do you think Trump is pro or anti-gun? What do you
I think Trump doesn't give a shit about guns.
Well, you remember that right near the beginning of his presidency, he was talking about guns and saying something along the lines, I don't know if he was being misquoted here, but take the guns and figure it out later. Didn't he say something like that?
Probably, maybe, I don't
But I
know.
think he was talking specifically about people with mental health issues, maybe?
Maybe, yeah. Right. And so that's also another issue to be discussed with mental health issues and guns. And I think we don't have a gun problem. I think it's more of a mental health problem in regards to those things specifically. And I think we have such a large mental health problem. Again, this is hypothesizing, is because I don't know, our life's pretty easy in comparative to what it has been, you know, in different times in history.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So because it's different, you have different problems, right? Now, you don't have the same type of physical ailments, I guess, because we've medically been able to isolate and get rid of a lot of diseases and things like that, right? I think mental health is just another aspect of something that we don't fully understand.
Yeah, I think a lot of the mental health issues we encounter is actually generated by our society. It's like a byproduct, like
Oh, absolutely. That's what I mean. I guess that's more or less what I was getting at.
Right.
Is the situation this has created it because our lives are easier. Our lives are, in a sense, we can go anywhere and get food. We can get food anywhere. You can have it delivered to you now.
Okay, do you remember when we talked with Ben and Tony about I think it was vaccines, and I brought up, well, what if we got rid of vaccines altogether and whoever had the immunity to beat the disease survive, and whoever didn't wouldn't. And wouldn't that make us strong as a race? And then you brought up, not necessarily, because we'd be living in, what did you call it? Like survival mode?
We would be in a survival state.
Survival state, right. So
you wouldn't have the growth in technology. You wouldn't have the growth, the things that exist. You wouldn't have all of these things if you didn't have a reason or the ability to spend time on it. Right.
So your general idea is that life has gotten easier.
Yes.
Okay. So and I brought up with Tony whether she'd read.
We have more free time.
That's what. This is where I'm going. Because so you think back to a time when people were more self-reliant. They had to be, because if they didn't, they would die of hunger or cold or whatever. So pretty much their entire lives were just filled with doing things in order to keep themselves alive. That was the purpose, or that was how their life was filled. Now we don't have that, and I'm maybe suggesting that because we don't have that drive of necessity, that we actually become weaker mentally. As far as
is it weaker mentally though? I don't know that it's weaker mentally. I think it's just the ability to have more thought. Like there's more ability to, or time. We have more access to information and more time to digest it.
Well, I'm going at the mental health issue. The mental health angle is because we have all that time, it allows aberrations to develop.
But is that a weakness though, or is it a development?
Anxiety, PTSD, just stress.
But isn't it a process of evolution though?
Are you stating we might have too much time, and that's probably what might be causing?
Yes.
Okay, Cheyenne just brought up a very good point.
I think the issue of too much time is a problem.
Everything's become so easily obtained that now there's too much to allow our brains to kind of absorb the anxiety aspect of having too much time and like the depression coming towards it.
Well, I actually think that those things are, I don't think they're problems. I think, let me rephrase that. They are clearly problems, right? But knowing how those problems work and exist make them more manageable, right? But maybe if I were in a different area, different space, if you will, those things might be proved to be useful, right? But in my current setting, they're not, right? So the anxieties that I have, the things that I have, whatever exists, right? They could be there for a reason, right? But is it an evolutionary change to figure out, like me, for example, I deal with my mental health issues, but I'm trying to make a change, right? So I see a line of mental health issues through my family. But where I've done something different is I actually speak to my children about it, and we discuss it, right? So again, along with the guns and things like that, it's something that we talk about. I think the biggest thing is conversation about it. So it's not foreign, right? So there's at least a basic primal understanding of what it is and how someone has dealt with it, right? Just having all the information available to you, I think, helps make you help you make a better choice or a better decision in regards to how you pursue things or how you approach things or whatever, because your mental health has to take into account again how you pursue things, because I can't pursue things the same way other people do because of the way that certain things affect me, right? So I can't just go to one of these people and follow a guru's advice and just go, cool, I'm just gonna will myself to, I've tried to will myself into doing whatever I need to do, but usually there's more harm than good done with that for me specifically. But that's me recognizing it and evaluating myself, which self-reflection is very important.
Sure.
But I think all of that ties together with the guns, because when you're not taking your mental health seriously, you know what I'm saying? Like the gun thing or whatever, if you're not taking your mental health seriously and you have access to a firearm, you know what I'm saying? Who's to know what's going to happen? I think that's the fear of a lot of people, and that's why they want to control it from the aspect of the tool and not the person, right? So I guess the idea is if you take the tool away, they can't do that anymore, right? That won't exist. I think the thought is you take out that tool, it doesn't exist anymore. But listen, if you take a hammer away from me, I can still drive that nail. I'll use a wrench to drive that nail. It may take longer, but I'll still do it, right? If it needs to get driven, in my mind, if it needs to get driven, I will drive that nail with something heavy and hard, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a hammer, right? The same way as if somebody wants to do mass genocide, they don't necessarily need a gun. If they want to disrupt a club of people or a school or something like that, it's just one of the tools they had access to. Eliminating the tool doesn't eliminate the crime.
Right.
I like that. I like what you said, because if you take the tool away, that makes it more ideal that it's not just the tool that causes it. Because yes, a lot of people have firearms in their home, but a lot more people have mental.
I wouldn't say more. I think a lot of people deal with mental health. I think a lot of people refuse to recognize their mental health issues, but you know, whatever. I'm not here to preach to people about their mental health. I can only speak on mine specifically. And one thing that I have learned through my journeys is everybody has a story, but it doesn't affect everybody the same way, right? You know, I can't control my genetics, can't control them. Well, maybe in the future I'll be able to. But I can't control my genetics. So, you know what I'm saying? I have the hand that I'm dealt. Now I just have to play with the hand that I'm dealt. Right? I got to make the best case out of what I have. Right? So the point of gun control, I think, is if you try and take away the gun, there's no more gun crimes in theory. But you can't get rid of guns. They're going to exist. And 3D printers, people can make guns. I actually used to work at a prison, and one of the things that were discussed in part of the training were the history of offenders or inmates making weapons, and they showed I think a 38 caliber pistol made out of plumbing.
Nice.
A single shot pistol.
Grandpa was proud.
Made out of plumbing, right? So basically what I'm saying is taking away the guns doesn't take away the gun crime, because people can still get guns, make guns, have guns, right? So when you take away people's ability to defend themselves with equal power or more, if necessary, then you've put them at a disadvantage and you've allowed someone an advantage over somebody else. I heard this quote. I don't remember where it was from or what it was, but the quote was, what is a gun? And I think it was off of a documentary for Pablo Escobar.
What is a gun?
Right. Well, the guy, I specifically, I think I remember him asking, do you know what a gun is for? Right. But
Okay.
the answer to that question from this guy was,
That's kind of a weird
it's
question.
for leveling the playing field. Makes
Yeah.
men equal.
Not just men. It
Well,
makes
in general.
it makes individuals.
I think men is spoken in the term of humanity, like
Right.
each individual mankind.
Well, there's that saying.
I'm not getting into PT stuff.
Right. What was it? God made man, and Henry Colt made them equal. What was it? Henry Colt. Or
Yeah,
right?
something like that, right? So it's along the lines of that. When you give someone the upper hand, and in regards to that, like in Texas, you can get a LTC, and you can carry a weapon, right? You can carry a firearm. I mean, right? So, right, you're not gonna just randomly mug a person on the street if you think they might be holding,
Right.
right?
Right.
The same way.
I was listening to this guy earlier talk about guns. Colion Noir, I think is his name. But he said one thing he always likes about going to the range is that everyone is super fucking polite. And you know why? Because anyone there has the power to kill you.
You know what? I think there is some truth to that, though. That is a controlled environment, but
It's also about equal respect and
everyone's there.
community and all that. But yeah.
Everyone's there because they want to shoot their firearm,
Right.
right? And that's people that are practicing just in case,
Right.
right? Maybe they hunt, maybe they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they just want to. Like I go camping sometimes to rough it,
Yeah.
to make
Lost
sure
some steam.
that I still know how to survive in that environment, right? Though it is not as barbaric as I would probably hope it would be, but at least I'm still staying somewhat acquainted with it, so that way, if a situation ever comes to where I have to do that, I at least am not completely useless. I have some value to give to the situation, right? So I can make a fire, I can, build a make to hut or whatever, right? I have those skills because I do it from time to time. I probably will never need it, right? But what's wrong with knowing how to?
Right.
Same way with going to a gun range, firing your weapon, or even just for fun. Making sure you still have the skill to use it just in case you ever have to.
Right.
Right? You don't want somebody carrying a gun that doesn't know how to fire it. Do you?
Well,
I think that's more dangerous than somebody that knows how.
So what you're saying is that should be a stipulation?
I don't know. I think that can be discussed. I don't know that that's the answer, but I do know that needs to be in the conversation to coming up with an answer. Because you have to, you have to take that into account, right? You're going to take away people's ability to defend themselves. I hate to repeat that, but in the sense of you don't want someone to have the upper hand upon you, right?
Right.
It puts you at a disadvantage. Therefore, your stresses, your anxieties, and things like that may be higher. Therefore, could potentially create much more of a mental health issue, because now I'm not saying people should use a gun as their security blanket.
So warm. So
but
warm.
There's a little bit less worry of something happening because you know that you have a plan if something does happen.
Right.
Right. People that know how to use it anyways.
Yeah.
And it's knowing what it can do and being fearful of using it because you know the harm that can happen. Right.
Well, I heard a lot of people's, let's say, specifically female women's objection to guns is that they couldn't see themselves using one in a self-defense situation that would end up with someone else getting killed. However, if you ask the same people, well, what about if the life of a child was on the line? What about then? Bang! They'd pick that up and save that child in a blink, in a second. So it's really about how you perceive the usage, I guess.
That's what the perception is, and I guess that goes back to the question: is why is it treated different in different societies? Why are we so? Oh, that was.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Why are we so adamant on we have to keep our guns? Why?
Well, why? Well, you can turn that question around, and I don't want to be what about, but why is the counter argument there? Why is there this drive to get rid of the guns, or to ban guns, or to stricter regulate?
I think
what's the drive?
The fear of being idle and doing nothing is far worse than doing something and doing it wrong in their eyes, in the eyes of do something. I don't care what it is. Do something. Fix it. Fix it.
I've
Fix
heard
it.
that fallacy.
That's
something.
That's not a realistic way to look at things, and it's
That's not
very
a
reactionary.
realistic way to handle any situation.
No.
Got to do something. I don't know what. I don't know. Do something.
Well, I don't know if I've asked this on the podcast or whatever, but like the human rights aspect, is it human rights, or are you wanting rights specific for your group of people? Right. So your marches are to get your specific group of people their rights. Right. But I think it should be everyone banding together so everyone has equal rights, right? It shouldn't be isolated to white, black, Hispanic, Asian, male, female, or whatever you
sure.
decide to call yourself or whatnot.
Right.
I don't think that should have any relevance in rights as a human.
Of course not. No.
However, mental health, if you've been diagnosed of a mental health disorder or whatever, there should be stipulations on what you can and can't do based upon the possible outcome of your mental health condition. Right? I don't know where that line is. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know what that is, but I do, again, has to be part of the conversation.
Right.
To be able to come up with a valuable answer, going back to the Bill of Rights. It is a list of compromises to get everyone at least going in the same direction.
Right. Well, what I'd like to get to is finding out what is at the core of this debate. Because I understand some people are pro guns, that's how they're grown up, home security, self-defense, and then the counter argument is, oh, think of the children, the deaths, the murder, all the rest of it. So I understand like the kind of the general, but what is actually at the core? What is the core issue? Like, okay,
I know what the answer to the question you're asking is. People don't want to be told what to do.
so the people who want to get rid of guns, how does that apply to them? They don't want to be told what to do, but they're having
Well,
to
the
tell other
people,
people what to
okay,
do?
so the people that want to keep the guns
Right.
are people that they don't want to be told what to do.
Right. So
Right.
essentially libertarians,
Yes.
self-determining.
Though they probably wouldn't recognize themselves as that.
They'd probably call themselves conservative.
Yes.
Right.
Typically, not across the board, but typically.
For the most part.
It's more the rule than the exception is the outlier, right?
Right.
So with that, you have the other side that wants to take it away. Again, it's about power. It's about we're going to have it our way, right? We want it our way.
Is it about power or is it about fear?
I don't think it's about fear. I think it's more about we did something. I think it's more about action. I think it's about people talking and saying nothing, right? It's about making, I'm doing air quotes, quote, change, you know? People wanting to make change.
Sure.
They don't care what the change is. They just want to change something. They want notoriety. They want
Sounds like they got too much time on their hands.
well, they want, again, that's my point. With people marching for their rights, it's not human rights. They're marching for the rights for their group of people that they're representing.
Okay, so if we go with your line of thought that they're doing these things just to do something, to bring about some kind of change.
It's something, listen, I think it starts with the best of intentions and good
But
faith.
What triggers those intentions? I'm trying to dig down a little bit more. And you said you don't think it's
I
fear,
think well, no, in that sense, maybe it is fear that drives it. Maybe
I think
it's
it's fear on both sides, because for someone who
fear of what though?
exactly, it's a different fear.
I guess that's why.
Maybe you're right. It is about power. It's about being powerless.
Yes,
For
fear.
for the gun owner to take their guns away would be to disempower them. For the person who is anti-gun, they feel powerless in the face of a gun
Yes.
because they don't. So
we're both actually right.
Yes, we are.
I think we were both on the same thing,
It's
but
just that the two different sides have a different
perspective.
mentality, a
It's
different perspective.
yeah.
The anti-gun people see themselves as potential victims of guns.
Which is exactly what
Wow.
you would do to people if you took their freaking guns away.
Yes, exactly. But
So-
why do they not see that?
Because it's a lot of talking with nothing, right? It's a lot of so for example, I like to watch different news stations for different things, but I'm going to be completely honest with you. I can tolerate Fox News longer than the rest of them. And the reason why is because when I watch those other programs, I've actually witnessed specific misquotes that were taken completely out of context to create a narrative, right?
Yeah.
Fox News does it too. But the abundance of it, the clickbait type propaganda that's given to spout off this opinion and this turning your nose up and scoffing at people, the shit gets old, right? So Fox News, what I really do like sometimes is they will show clips of CNN and stuff like that, and they'll kind of laugh about it, right? I'm sure CNN does it too, to Fox News or whatever, right? The only problem is Fox News has a plethora of people to pull from, and everyone else can only pull from Fox News because that seems to be the only red channel, if you will. But anyways, so watching those things, I feel like when I watch CNN, it's a lot of talking, right? A lot of talking. It's just talking, right? Talking, just talking, right? Whereas if I
Hey, don't diss the talking thing.
if I'm
too much,
watching,
that's what we do.
right? Well, if I'm watching something else or reading something else, right? It's more about a question or an answer, right? Not about gossip, right? I feel like when I'm watching, there's a lot
of the news now is not really news. It's just people spouting their opinions about what's going on rather than giving you any facts.
I feel like that's what we're doing.
Damn. We'll have to slap Fox or something on the front of our...
Right. No, but I think, and so they try and bring.
It's sorry, can I just interrupt?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
It is slightly different though, because when CNN does it, like what I'm trying to give us a little bit of grace here, how we're not quite like that. When CNN does it, they have a preconceived like destination where they're trying to take the viewers, and they will put everything, they will get the people and the quotes and everything to get that narrative on a straight line.
That is media. General.
Whereas what we're doing is we're more trying to look at things from different angles and figure it out.
We're actually asking questions and trying to give answers based upon our experiences. That's all we can really do. And the hope is for you, the listener, to maybe have a aha moment, or maybe take an interest in something that you didn't have before, or have a conversation with somebody about something that you didn't think that you would have a conversation about.
Right.
It's I had a conversation at work the other day about a yellow moth or butterfly.
Oh yeah? What's the difference?
Well, I knew that it was a moth.
Okay.
And it was pretty, but wait, I said that out loud.
So, back to guns.
The manly thing. Anyways, yes, guns. So,
sorry, I've been a little bit distracted because I'm trying to pull up some...
What you trying to pull up on me, homie?
Yeah, pull up on...
You don't want smoke, dog.
Yeah. That's a bad way to roll. Yeah, I was just trying to look at death rates because I looked
Death
at this
rays.
Death rate. No, we're not into death ray guns yet. No, death rates.
You said the keyword there, yet.
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 Right? Yeah. We get it. Leading causes of death, and I can't find the what I'd found before, but the deaths in the US, the number of deaths by gunshot are phenomenally small. In fact, I'm looking at the CDC website here, reporting deaths for 2015, and they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 causes of the top 10 causes of death listed. None of them indicate gunshot, except for the lowest one, which is suicide. So there could be some gun related death in there, but above that, I mean, so that's like 13. I think that's in percentage. 13%. No, that can't be right.
What website are you using for this?
I don't know. I just googled it, but it's from the CDC, Center for Disease Control.
Right,
so.
but is it official to their stuff, or is it? The reason why I'm asking is because you got to be sure of the
source material.
Source material, yeah. Because people can just listen. I hate statistics because, again, with a narrative, if you have a narrative, you can make statistics tell your story for you.
Well, yes. The thing with statistics is the framing of the question.
Yes.
Initially, and then the interpretation of the data secondary. But when you're talking about things like road accidents versus heart attacks versus gunshots, those are quite distinct things. Mm-hmm. You'd have difficulty manipulating that. Once you start breaking it down, you say, or like when they say suicide, or gun, you have to be specific. Gunshot, suicide by gunshot, or, I don't know what I'm getting at here. So certain things you can, but certain things can be manipulated.
Well, I think it's causation and correlation too. Like,
Right,
does
right.
does just because you have the data points, do they necessarily affect each other, or is there something else that's going?
Right. It's the thing with what is it? Correlation versus
Causation, right? Is that it?
yeah. Correlation doesn't necessarily indicate causation.
Yes. So just because I think the famous or known example is, I don't remember, it's ice cream.
And some are gunshot.
Yes, and gun violence or
violence.
gun violence or
So
hot crimes, right? So basically, the data points suggest that when more ice cream is being sold, there's more deaths happening.
ban ice cream. Ban
Right.
assault
So
ice creams.
again, so
Automatic ice creams. Ban them.
so just because they both exist and they both go a direction, they don't affect one another.
Right.
There's something else that's affecting both of them,
Right.
and that's the temperature.
Right. So that's a correlation situation with no causation between the two factors.
Yes.
Right.
And, so if you take out ice cream and replace it with time of year, temperature, anything like that that suggests a timeline, you will see the same growth that you did with the ice cream.
Right.
I mean, it's just, you have to ask the right question to get the right answer.
That's the framing of the question.
Yes. So you have to make sure that the data that you're looking at as far as statistics go are answering the question that's being asked.
Right.
And I don't think everyone does.
Well, it's so much easier just to have someone else tell you what to think.
Okay, so I had pulled up earlier on Vox. I don't know if you've ever used Vox.
Me personally?
Yeah. But sorry, I gotta move my laptop a little bit, or move my mic. So it's written December 4th, 2015. It looks like. But anyways, it's under the policy and politics, but it's titled "How Gun Control Works in America Compared with 4 Other Rich Countries," and they give some data points or whatever, and it's homicides by firearm per 1 million people, right? And they have the United States at 29.7 per million, right?
Per million or 100,000?
Per million.
Per million? Okay,
Right.
damn,
29.7 per million, right? The next closest, in which is suggested on here, I don't know if there's other information, but the next one they put on here is Switzerland at 7.7 per 1 million.
Really?
Yes.
That's the rate of gun death by population.
Yes.
Wow, Switzerland?
7.7. Again, I don't know if there's anything else in between.
Right.
But this is for rich countries.
Right.
Right. This is not
So first world.
first world countries.
First
Yes.
world problems, hashtag.
So, and this is numbers are for 2012. So this was written in 15. This data is from 2012.
Yeah, you also have to go back a few years to get.
Right. So we're looking at data points, and it has Australia in 2012 at 1.4 per million.
That's pretty dang good.
Was that before or after their
Oh wait, is that percent or actual?
1.4 per million?
So like 1.5 people got shot per million, got killed.
I think that's what it's suggesting. Yes.
Well, that is like
It's really
almost
low.
like zero. I'm sorry to that 1.5 person who got shot, but that is pretty dang in a million.
But I
that's
guess
pretty dang close.
what is Australia's population in 2012?
Well, yeah, and then again you come into population distribution. Australia is a big open country. There is large cities, but a lot of people do live like we do.
Rural.
Rural, sorry.
Right. So, okay. So the question is, this was from 2012. When did they institute their gun ban?
Ah, interesting.
This is the reason
I
why.
swear it's only a couple of years ago.
I think it was like 14 or 16, maybe.
So look. Oh shit! Just give me an easy answer. Okay.
Listen, the
I don't
first
wanna-
mistake was relying on Google for an
I
answer.
know. I don't want to think. Australia changed its gun laws after 1996 mass shooting. That's not right.
No, they did. I do recall reading something about that.
Back in '96.
I didn't read it in
Right,
'96.
I know, but I mean that happening. Let's see. Let's just put in 2016.
Anyway, so the reason why I'm asking the question
Uh-huh.
for you listening is because I want to see if there's any sort of change in the information that's been had with the homicides per firearm per 1 million, right? So U.S. is way up there at 29.7. That's a lot. But it just says it's listed as homicides, not just gun crimes. Or not just this is homicides, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Well, the thing is, going back right to the beginning of my experience with firearms and growing up, the UK pretty much, very, very low number of firearms. But it turns out, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but London has exceeded one of the major US cities as the murder capital, as at a higher murder rate, and the majority of those murders are occurring with knives. There's hardly any firearm deaths. It's all knives. So they're talking about banning knives. I know we talked about this a lot of times, but to me it's just so ridiculous. It's like banning fire. It's like no, I'm serious. It's like banning the wheel, or it's something so fundamental. A cutting edge, a pointy cutting edge, is something so fundamental to our existence since we learned
people
how to
get
make
upset when I carry a broadsword on my back.
Look, if you have a good reason, and you think it's appropriate, by all means.
No, my uncle sent me a link on Facebook a couple days ago about an argument escalating to a sword fight.
This happens in Scotland quite often. In the north, no, I'm serious. In the north of England or Scotland, every so often there will be a story about some dude thinking he's a Highlander or something, running around town with a fucking sword. It's true.
So, is there more sword crimes over there than there are here?
Higher sword crimes, yes. More readily available in Scotland. I mean, you can go to a gun show, but when have you seen a sword show?
They're at the gun shows, dog.
Oh, yeah?
Same place.
Oh, yeah?
Same place.
And that's another
I think
thing.
it's the same
I
weird-
love the fact that there've never been any mass shootings at gun shows, even so there's like masses of guns. It's
Yeah.
awesome, isn't it?
Really blows a hole in the theory of more guns, more deaths.
Yes, yes.
But again, that's isolated. That's a controlled environment.
I tell you what, if the world ended, that's exactly where I'd want to be. I think. Okay, so the gun ban in Australia was 1996 after 35 people were killed in a mass shooting in Tasmania, which isn't really even part of Australia. But anyway, but I think what happened recently was that they did what do you call that? Not an amnesty. You know what I'm talking
Like
about?
a gun trade-in thing?
Yeah, encouraging people to trade in their guns. Guns.
All right,
Gonna need
so
those guns.
I Google searched which city has the highest murder rate in the world.
Oh yeah, it's
This
somewhere
is
in
just
South
murder.
America, isn't it?
This is just murder, and just doesn't matter how it happened, right?
Right.
Number 1, Tijuana, Mexico.
Oh, dude, I've got the same list up.
Here, guess what? Who's
You
the
got to
second
scroll
one?
down a little bit to get to.
Who's the second one? Acapulco.
Yeah,
Right.
going loco down in Acapulco.
Right. So then we have Venezuela, Caracas.
You right?
I think these are fairly popular places, right?
Holiday destinations: Tijuana, Acapulco, Caracas. Yeah.
Right.
So
Let me just say,
population,
listen.
tourist
With all of
population?
these names, I want y'all to start singing with maracas.
Oh, we
Anyways,
can.
so
It's a long list.
5 of the top 6 are in Mexico.
Yes.
then
South America, South America, South America.
then Venezuela again.
Uh-huh.
So you got Venezuela, Mexico, and Brazil.
Yeah. Brazil's bad for gang warfare
And then,
stuff.
the first United States is St. Louis at 15.
Yeah,
They have
at
100.
15.
This is okay. So, homicides in 2018. It has the United States, St. Louis, 187 homicides of a population of 308,626. So that puts homicides per 100,000 at 61.
Per year. Right?
Yeah, so per 100,000 people. So that they had 187. Well, hang on. No, they're listing it by per capita, homicides per 100,000. That's how it's listed.
Yeah.
I want to make that very clear. This isn't total number. This is per 100,000 per year.
Yeah, so if you look
So
at
it's based on population.
Yeah, some of the populations are higher, so they have higher rates, but that puts them...
So we have to be looking at the homicides per 100,000 per year.
Mm-hmm.
That's the important number. That's how the data. And by the way, I'm on Wikipedia with this. This list is on Wikipedia. And it's, if you wiki, list of cities by murder rate.
Oh, what was I hearing recently about Japan and gun violence? Or guns? Suicide?
Baltimore is the next American, United States on the list at 23.
I'm going to ask you the same as you asked me last time. Where are you getting your numbers from? Is this true?
San Juan.
It's Wikipedia, so it's got to,
Well, I'm telling everyone where I'm pulling it from. I'm not making any.
Assertions about credibility.
Okay, so at the bottom it says number of by country represented in the table. Mexico has 15.
Go Mexico.
Brazil, let me just be clear, there's only 50 on the list. So
50 countries.
no, 50
States, cities.
for the list of top murder cities in the world. It's only a compiled list of 50, the top 50.
Right.
So of the top 50, Mexico has 15, Brazil has 14, Venezuela 6. Okay, these are all above the United States.
Mm-hmm.
United States has 5. South Africa 3, Honduras 2, Colombia
Wait,
2.
what is this number again?
Number of cities in the table.
Okay, gotcha.
So of the top 50, Mexico represents 15 of the top 50.
That's pretty awesome. That's should put that on there.
I wonder what Mexico's gun laws are.
Yeah, right.
And I wonder if the cartel care.
Well, this is an interesting thing. Maybe this is an example of that South America or Mexico in specific needs more guns because the cartel have guns. So there's all these gun deaths.
Problem is the cartel also sometimes gives back to the community, I guess. Gives money where it's poverty stricken.
Is that right? Is that
I don't
what
know.
they do?
I think they're drug. I don't know. I don't know how it works. I'm not a drug lord. I don't know.
We'll figure it out.
I'm sure drugs have something to do with it though. But when you have a black market available because everything is illegal, then you support causes like that.
Okay. So, unless the bearer has explicit authorization from the Secretariat of National Defense, it is illegal and punishable by law to enter Mexican territory with any firearm, as well as to keep and carry any firearm on your person or vehicle at any time, anywhere. So the cartels really do not care, because I have seen them in their cars with guns. Not only in their vehicles, but on their person in the vehicle. So, yeah.
So you would say that they have strict gun laws?
I think that's quite a bit stricter than here. Like, if you're not allowed to even have one, like, in your car.
It just says enter, though. What about...
Oh, right, I see what you're saying.
What about as
So if you're already there and then you
resident.
get one,
Right. Yeah. What's the law on having a gun
shit.
as a Mexican resident?
Right, gun politics and again we're going to Wikipedia. Gun politics and laws in Mexico covers the role firearms play as part of a society. Well, this is too long-winded. Just give me the short version. So law enforcement and private citizens may acquire, own, possess, and carry firearms, covering rights and limitations to individuals, including hunting, shooting, sports participants, property and personal protection. So, right, Mexico has extremely restrictive laws regarding gun possession. There's only one gun store in the entire country. Wait a minute, let me just read that again. Mexico has extremely restrictive laws regarding gun possession. There is only one gun store in the entire country, and it takes months of paperwork to have a chance at purchasing one legally. What? That can't be true. One gun store in the entire country?
From
Yeah,
how
dude.
many deaths there are
Like
in
the most.
country?
Like the most in the world.
But we only
So
have one
there
gun.
is a lack of legal ability to purchase guns, yet guns are. Well, we actually know. We don't know that guns caused all those homicides.
Well, that's the thing as well. When looking at US figures for guns or gun deaths, you have to consider that a large
I'm just going to
chunk
let
of
you
that-
know firearm death rates in the United States, state by state.
Oh.
I have pulled up on Wikipedia.
Okay.
So I just want to let you know that I have that pulled up. So if we get into a discussion about this, it's already up.
Yeah. So because deaths are kind of lumped in together, like road traffic accidents, they won't tell you whether the person was driving or crossing the road or fell off a bridge or what. Same with gun deaths. A large part of that is suicide, and a large part of that is gang
All right.
violence, and then official
Sorry.
legal police use.
All right, so I'm going to read this verbatim. State firearm death rates, 2016, rate per 100,000 population. National firearm death rate is 11.8
Nationally.
nationally.
Okay.
These numbers include, among others, death as a result of suicide, self-defense, and accidents. A list regarding only murders is provided below.
Only murders is provided? Okay.
So so the national firearm death rate is 11.8 per 100,000.
Okay.
So what's that per mil?
Just shift it over 100,000. Yeah, shift it over one, so that's 118
Per mil.
per million. Yeah.
Okay. So the numbers have actually
Wait,
gone.
have I done that right? No, sorry. No, I've shifted it the wrong way. 1.18. If it's for a larger number, that proportion's got to get smaller. So yeah, it's 1.18 per million. No, I was right the first time. Sorry. All right, I'm getting sideways looks here from production. Yeah, it's 118.
So 100, the number would go up if you're raising the number.
Yes, you're right. All right, got it.
118 per mil. So that means, what was that? What was that stat? Hang on, let me see what the stat is. This has homicides by firearm per 1 million. Okay, so this is okay. Hang on.
Where are we going with this?
There's all right. So I'm on back on Vox. I'm
Okay.
trying to compare different years
Right.
with similar information. Right. I'm trying
yeah,
to.
It's tricky.
I'm trying to make a comparison. So Vox has homicides by firearm per 1 million. Okay. Wikipedia has a list regarding only murders. Okay, so this is only murders. So homicides, right?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Okay, so this is essentially the same information. Wait. All right, no, hang on. Stop. I'm wrong. I'm talking about the 11.8. So it's 118 per mil.
Right.
But that includes suicide, self-defense,
Self-defense.
and accidents.
Right.
Where on the Vox website, it has homicides, which are just just homicides, right? By firearm. They have in 2012, the United States listed at 29.7 per million.
Okay. So that's the number of gun-related homicides
In 2012.
in 2012. Okay.
All right, you're writing it down for me since
Yeah, because I can't remember all these numbers. So yes.
I think I'm trying to make a poor correlation because I think I just figured out that I'm wrong.
Oh yeah.
Because 118 per mil, that's everything. Right, that's accidents. That's right. This is just homicide, so it's not the same information.
No. It's different.
So for me to get that exact information, I would actually need to accumulate all of these just in murder. Maybe there's a list below that.
What was 118? What year was that?
This is 2016.
Okay.
All of this information is from 2016.
Right, but that was homicides in general. Right. Yeah, no, I tried to prove something similar to someone in the UK because, you know, they went crazy when they found out I purchased a firearm, and you know, it's that kind of reaction, like coming from a person who says, "Why would you need a knife? You bought a gun?" And yeah, and I tried to prove to them that in fact there's more people die by other methods of homicide. I try to prove that more people get stabbed than shot, but it's not true. Not in the US. In the UK, yes. But it doesn't matter. People are still getting killed.
Right.
Maybe it's an American thing that we just like convenience over here. So don't want to get deep down and dirty in it.
Well, it's real personal. Listen,
that is. Yeah.
I would assume that if you take the time to stab someone, it's real personal. Like it's intimate, if you will.
It's definitely intimate. I wouldn't say it's necessarily personal.
Right.
It's
more intimate.
Personal. It gets real personal real quick.
By the way, I'm getting off this death stuff because I'm sitting here trying to figure out math, and I'm not trying to do math right now. So I'm sorry, guys, if I let you down. Do some more research for me if you decide to, and let me know what you come up with.
Well, from previous research, all I know, well, not all I know, I do know that
You barely know that.
I barely know anything. Gun deaths are completely overshadowed by road traffic accidents, road deaths, and by cancer and heart disease. And we're talking about orders of magnitude. We're talking about thousands versus hundreds of thousands. You know, when it comes to wait a minute, let me pull the CDC here. So, oh shit, I lost it. Anyway, the number of people die of heart disease and related things and cancer completely outweighs. It's like guns almost become zero. Gun deaths almost become zero.
Make cancer legal then.
Yeah, no, you've got to ban cancer and ban heart attacks and ban cars, and then we'll all be happier. Well, definitely we're happier. I don't know what I'm getting at.
I don't know. Maybe we might think we're more. I don't know. Anyways, I don't know. I have no clue. But anyhow, so what do you think a solution to all of this? You know, we're talking about gun control and stuff like that. We're kind of criticizing it in a way, but what's the alternative? What do you offer as an alternative? A potential alternative, if you will.
Well, I mean, that would depend if you're asking me as an authoritarian or an anarchist. As an anarchist, I would say get the fuck out of anybody else's business. Take care of your own. If you're worried about the crazy guy with a gun, you get yourself a gun, you take him out. Other than that, I don't care. I mean,
wait,
because
are you saying take preemptive measures?
Oh, did I say that out loud? I mean,
just go ahead and get rid of him before he has a chance to get rid of you.
Listen, as an anarchist who basically anarchist has been misrepresented. An anarchist basically believes that the individual is their own government. Essentially, there's no master above. There's no lawgivers. You make your own laws and you live by your own laws. That's what an anarchist essentially. So yes, in an anarchist mindset, if I perceive a threat, it's my duty to eliminate that threat.
Based on the way you feel,
yeah,
your life is governed by yourself.
Right. But of course, then
Your own
if
set of
everyone
rules.
else is an anarchist, they're going to come out after me and shoot me, and we get into this
You
whole
can see how that could be chaos, right?
absolute chaos in a way, really. Yeah. But as an authoritarian, I would say, yes, I would say that only those people who can demonstrate that they need to have such a thing may have it. That would completely eliminate the mental health issue.
Right. So how
Because
do
if
you
you come into
demonstrate
an
a need?
office
What?
and say, I need
But
a gun.
who?
Sorry, Bob.
But still, who decides what's acceptable, what's not?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying, and that's why I've represented those two extremes of anarchy and authoritarianism. Who decides? Who
You can't leave the decision to someone above you. As an anarchist, you can't leave that decision to
No.
someone above you.
No, you don't.
But you also can't have people making their own rules up too if you want to have a civilized society.
If you want to have a society where people live together,
Civilized society.
civilized society.
Because essentially, an anarchist would eventually fall into some group of people that feel the same.
That is a flaw with anarchy. That eventually anarchy
Creates its own.
its own system, laws, rules, parameters, limitations.
Because the more powerful of all of the anarchists will eventually win out.
Yes. Daddy anarchist will become king anarchist, and he's going to anarchist over everyone else's keists.
Yeah. So essentially, but what do you offer as a solution though? Like of any sort of movement in the right direction?
Okay, so
So you say people need to demonstrate, like you gave two sided views,
right,
but
but
that's
neither
based.
one of them is a good
But
solution.
no, well, that is a perspective of you and how you see it, right?
Right.
So, where do you find the balance between those two in your mind?
Well, I want to go back to something we said off air earlier. Is I think when people talk about guns, as in as a political issue, we're not talking about mechanics or anything. We're talking about guns as a political issue. I think people not convolute. What's the word? They bring a lot of different things into the subject, which completely obscures really. You got people tugging in all different directions. There's the anti-suicide advocates. There's law and order advocates. There's safety, the children, and all the rest of it. So there's all these different kind of people tugging in all kinds of different directions, and that's why I think the gun debate's not going anywhere, because there's too much. There's too much involved. If we're going to talk about mental health, that is, I think, unrelated to guns. Of course, it becomes related once someone with mental health issues acquires a gun and does something negative.
But they're two separate things.
They're two separate things.
You
So
you can't have the two existing on the same thing. You have to address.
I mean, they cross over at some point. But my idea is that if you addressed the mental health issue, you would intervene before they crossed over. If you see what I'm saying, without the need to interrogate and investigate and do all these hoop jumping.
But mental health isn't the only issue, though.
No, it's not. It's not. But that's what I'm saying. If we address the actual issues in the big pot and take them out, so now we've gotten rid of mental health because we as a society have found
We found that
better-
valuable and important to take notice and to deal with.
to address.
Right.
Yes, and so now that issue is being addressed. So what have we got left in the gun, in the gun, anti-gun, or the need for gun control? What's left in there? There's people concerned about safety.
Well, I think it's the people that are uncomfortable that other people have guns and they don't
Right.
think they should.
Right, it's a fear thing.
Right? They think that somebody else shouldn't have a gun. They don't believe guns should exist in a society, a civil society. You shouldn't need guns, right? Their mindset is you shouldn't need it.
Yeah, but there's lots of things that people would say.
Why should they make a
don't
decision?
have, and they don't think other people should, or they don't think other people need, yet they don't make such a big fuss about.
Guns hurt people, though.
Okay. So it's again the fear of harm.
Maybe not on yourself, maybe it's of someone else. But wouldn't you say that someone that goes through the avenues of obtaining a weapon or a firearm legally is that someone is less willing to do harm with it? Right? You have crime of passion, you have things like that.
Sure.
You have things that just come up that aren't necessarily affected by overall mental health.
Right.
Right? Maybe it's just a moment, right? But maybe people are thinking that if you get rid of the tool in the moment, then maybe that moment doesn't happen. Maybe it doesn't. In some cases, it may not. But in some cases, it doesn't necessarily mean that something wouldn't still happen.
Well, that's true, but it's like, let's make this a little bit ridiculous. I heard a story recently of a couple that went on vacation somewhere tropical. Anyway, he pushed her off a cliff. So what are we going to do? We're going to get rid of cliffs because in that moment of passion, he pushed her off the cliff, and the cliff was a means of her death. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, but my argument against that is you're given isolated specific incidences, right? You're given, okay, cool. So we're going to ban cliffs. Well, no, that's unrealistic, right? And you may say that banning guns is unrealistic also, but let's guns are something that are made.
Right.
They're not something that just exists in the world. We, as humans, have the ability to make them, right?
Sure.
So, essentially, you can't get rid of that ability to make them.
Well, I think it would be incredibly difficult. You would have to remove all knowledge, all existing knowledge on the production, and that would have knock-on effects onto other things like fireworks, because you'd have to get rid of the secret of black powder.
I think it always eventually happens, though.
It will. People will figure out other ways.
Maybe they again, it's a projectile thrower.
Right.
Essentially,
So
that's what it is.
Gunpowder or CO2 or
It's a projectile thrower.
right.
Right. So, because of that, like, how do you appease both sides? No, you can't appease both sides. There's no, me talking about appeasing both sides is how do you come to a common middle ground, a compromise to.
How do you come to a place where both sides are comfortable with the resolution?
Yes. And I actually think I have an answer to that.
Go on, let me hear it.
Education.
Okay, sure.
So let me detail what I mean by that. So if you spend time educating someone on a subject, they have a better understanding of the operation of that subject or whatever it is that you're talking about. So if you're teaching someone about how a firearm works, right, and then allowing them an opportunity to see it in action in real life, it takes, number one, some of the fear off of it. Number two, it takes some of the curiosity away because it's not a taboo thing. It's less, oh, what's this? Oh, what's this, right? Yeah. And I think people being more knowledgeable about it can have a better, okay, cool. Well, I don't want that anywhere around me, right? But the problem is you can only control that in your space.
How do you mean? The education?
No.
The not having it?
Not having it.
Right.
But again, they're able to make that decision on their own because it is something that is provided in curriculum and education to our youth so that way they understand. Listen, if you teach people how to fight, do you have more fights?
No, actually.
Exactly.
No, actually.
So if you teach people what a firearm is, how it works, and the amount of devastation that it can cause, maybe people will be less inclined to use that in a way. Number one, it'll prevent accidents. It'll prevent a lot of accidents.
It'll help prevent accidents.
It won't it'll never get rid of all of them because accidents happen.
People.
Well, no, it's not even always stupid people. Sometimes the weapon malfunctions.
Right, sure.
Shit happens.
Sure.
Right? So that's a variable that you can't account for. So you're going to always have some of that in some capacity. Your mic don't make as much noise as mine does when you move it. So you can mine's got springs and stuff on it, so it like right. So yeah, I didn't even hear you move the mic.
Oh yeah? Okay, good. I was worried I might get some feedback by hitting
mine on the table anytime I move. do that. I can hear that.
Oh yeah,
On the-
vibration comes.
yeah.
On. Shit.
Yeah, I need to put something there. But anyway, so when you educate, if you provide an avenue for that to be explored,
Okay, I'm gonna go with you on that, but I'm gonna play devil's advocate and say,
please. Again, this isn't a fully worked out thing.
no,
It's
I
just,
know, I know. I'm just looking for holes. So say, I don't know what age would be sensible, but same as everyone learns to drive a car and gets a driver's license. Well, not everyone, but most people do.
I actually think it needs to start much younger.
Yes, I agree. Maybe 12.
I actually think at an age of curiosity,
Right, when they first start showing interest,
Well,
real interest.
4 or 5 years old, I
Really?
think
Okay.
understanding what it is, and that it's like, oh, stay away from this. Not like a oh show and tell thing,
Right.
but more
Careful,
of
the
a
stove is hot.
yeah, more or less that. Yes, and I'm not saying that's a good example,
Basically,
but
yes.
like the stove's hot, stove's hot, stove's hot. You can teach that.
Yeah.
Right. And again, that'll keep a kid from touching a stove for a while, but eventually they might get curious enough to touch it.
You cannot prevent human curiosity. You cannot. There's nothing you could do. I mean,
But
yes,
if you
there
make
are,
but if you make the
not
information more available, the curiosity is less, oh, what's this? And more like, oh, this is that. It's less a wonderment and more of a, oh, I can recognize that.
Okay, say that got implemented that pretty much, let's say 99.9% of the population is familiar with firearms, knows what they are, how to operate them.
A basic understanding.
Right.
Not full detailed, just a basic understanding.
Right. Gun safety,
Yes.
which is a pointy end.
Right. Don't point it at people.
Right.
Safety. Gun safety is essentially what needs to be taught. The safety, and to operate a firearm correctly, you need to operate it safely.
Right. So say that gets implemented, and then how would you still address those people who think it infringes their right to peace and happiness because other people have guns around them? How do you address those individuals who, despite being familiar with it and understanding and all the rest of it, that for some reason they just feel they don't want one and don't want anyone else around
So
them?
they're choosing to be ignorant.
What if
on a
it's, What if
subject.
it's something else? What if it's just
No,
like PTSD or something else, that some association?
Listen, if you're starting education at an early age, you're not developing that stuff prior to the gun knowledge necessarily. I'm sure in some instances maybe or whatever, but essentially you eliminate some of that. Right. So how many people go into the military never firing a firearm?
Well, I tell you what, my dad was in the military for quite some time. He doesn't like guns. He knows full well how to operate one.
But he has an educated decision. So based on
educated perspective.
right, he knows how they work and he knows their use. He just doesn't feel that he needs it, and he doesn't like them.
I think that's what it is. I won't speak for him, but it's my impression that he just doesn't really like them because, well, I mean,
He doesn't see them applicable in his everyday life.
no, he doesn't have a personal use for them, and well, I mean, he wouldn't. I don't think he would like tell anyone else what they should do as far as firearms go.
Right.
But for him personally, it's just not something that he wants to associate with anymore.
You know what? I think he self-identifies that way. Again, not speaking for your father, just in general terms. I think it's important for individuals to identify based on their own information they have received. And if you're choosing to not use the information that is provided for you, that's your own ignorance. Like that's you choosing, but that does happen. But again, I think if it's part of curriculum, if you will, because we do have a society that is very pro-gun for the most part.
Well, let me just bring something in here. Do
It's
you
a very
remember this-
unique perspective, I know, and it's out of the box
no,
thinking.
no.
To me, it's out of the box thinking.
I like it, and I think it's sensible as necessary, unless you get rid of all guns and all knowledge of all guns. But what about the sex education thing? Okay, so in the UK, when this was an issue for me, they were saying that in order to prevent teenage pregnancies, and the spread of STDs, they need to introduce sex education at a younger age. Now, this time, I think it was like 14, and they wanted to lower it down to
Here,
12.
let me stop you right there.
Uh-huh.
You're dealing with the the growth of a child to an adult and the hormones
Right.
changing in the process.
Right.
I don't think it's applicable here in the same sense because to me, again, I could be wrong, but to me, that is a function of the body. That's not something that you can necessarily quote unquote teach, if you will, because people, their hormones, their body changes, they're not knowing how to deal with those things necessarily. Like, do you think a 14-year-old goes and tries to get pregnant?
Very rarely.
Right. It's more an accident type thing, right?
Right.
Right. Shit happens, right? Shit happens. You know, people are exploring the curiosity part of it, right? But I'm curious to know, did that actually lower the youth?
I don't think so. As I recall, in fact, teenage pregnancy is just constantly on the increase.
Well,
I have to
also,
look up numbers, but
you know, there's a lot to do with society and things like that. But again, sex education, again, that's just a human function. Sex is a human function,
sure.
right?
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but what I'm trying to get
operating.
at is purely the education side of it doesn't necessarily represent a preventative measure,
Right.
because that's basically how you're.
So
how
just
you're pitching it.
education alone. Well, what I'm also, it's not just education, it's also hands-on interacting. Or at least maybe not you being hands-on,
Sex education is going to be
hang on.
complicated.
but being present while an instructor does it
Right.
potentially, right?
Right.
And being able to hold a firearm that isn't necessarily loaded,
Right.
right? But just, you know, knowing how it feels or the action, you know, just different things about it.
I tell you what, they need to do. I think is it Jet Li? I think Jet Li does that. Or is it Jackie Chan does that instant disarm? If we taught all kids that in school, it's like,
So
you know, where
just
he does
teach
like
crop-
chink, chink,
crop-
chink, and like takes it apart in the guy's hand in like a second.
Just completely dismantles
Yeah,
it
yeah,
and
yeah.
hands it back to him in pieces.
Yeah, just tink, tink, tink.
I think it's a Jackie Chan thing, maybe.
I think it's Jackie Chan. Yeah.
Right,
Police
so-
or something.
I think it was with Rush Hour or something like that. Maybe.
Yeah. That's
Maybe
right.
that's it. I think that's the one. But anyway, yeah, because that's where you can like switch on the handcuffs or whatever. And
I have a question.
go.
On your educating about firearms and everything, what happens when fear gets put into that education? Or educating poorly to where, yeah, they know some, but they don't know.
But isn't that the problem with education in general?
It is.
So that's a different problem.
So what you're asking whether the actual educating about a thing would cause fear of it?
Well, no. What if it's
got you.
being instructed by an instructor that's making you scared of it? Is that what you're
Right.
asking?
Okay.
Kind of, sort of.
So
It's
like being taught sex education by a nun?
yeah, like here's a ruler, sex is bad. Whack.
Somebody that hates guns and despises them teaching about guns.
Right.
You have to have somebody passionate about what they're teaching about. Like it's the same thing with teaching in general. If the teacher's not passionate about what they're teaching, it's a bullshit ass class, right? Even with professors, like college professors.
Yeah.
If you listen, my favorite class that I took was humanities. And the reason why is because the teacher or the professor that taught the class was just a fanatic of humanities, right? And just the enthusiasm in which they spoke of it and went through it. It was awesome.
Because I just want to say 90% of fear is taught. Like, one of our sons fell down the stairs. Now he's fearful of the stairs because of how we react to it. I guess maybe it's the reaction.
Sometimes, yes. I mean, there is psychology aspect to it too. But I think as long as I think that's human nature to learn with mistakes like that. That's an accident. That's being more careful on the stairs, right? Right. But you're also talking about a 2-year-old. You know, so that's not really ready to be educated on guns yet.
Well, but at the same time, what happens if a 2-year-old stumbles upon a gun? Because what
Yeah,
if we're
but
cleaning something?
yes,
That's up to the
valid.
parents.
Right.
That's the, you know,
The gun safety would address that before that situation
listen,
arose.
it doesn't fix it eventually fixes itself is what I'm saying. It's something you start from the bottom and allow it to work its way through the generations, right? It's not a quick fix by any
Right,
means. It is
right.
not quick.
So-
It is slow moving.
So education over generations and reintroduce Darwin Awards and public shaming. You see what I'm saying? This idiot here managed to shoot himself.
Listen, they have those videos of like fails. That's kind of the Darwin Awards, if you will. I love the fail compilations because it just
My favorite one is these two guys who took their dog out hunting, and they thought it would be, well, they had a few beers and they thought it would be absolutely hilarious to dress him up in their hunting gear. So hat, vest, shotgun. Dog managed to shoot one of them. By accident, mind you.
they shouldn't have had it loaded.
They shouldn't have had a loaded gun given to a dog while they were drinking.
Hang on, first off, that gun shouldn't have been loaded while they were drinking.
While they were
Yeah.
drinking, there we go.
See, again, that's part of gun safety, gun education.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it goes back to knowing you still have those decisions to make, but as a society,
Mm-hmm.
instead of getting rid of it, how about we educate about it, and then let us make our own decisions based on the education, right? So if you have more people educated about how a firearm works, listen, if someone points a fake one at you and you can recognize it as a fake because you're like, that's not what it, you know what I mean? Like like in the whole gun in the pocket thing and things like that, right? So some of those foolish things, if people are more, if people are more, if people are more knowledgeable about something, like they're less likely to be duped.
Yes. Yes.
Well, with your being able to recognize it, I feel like that kind of goes a little towards like law enforcement. Aren't they trained to recognize stuff like that in an instant?
Well, think about it this way. Like I asked how many people have gone into the military without firing a weapon?
Yes.
And how many people go in those situations without ever facing some of those environments, right? So maybe they are taught, but their job is almost an impossible job because we ask them to police people from themselves, which shouldn't be part of their job, but it is. Right. So because of that, you have a lot of emotions and things like that, and things get lost, right? You forget stuff. And unless it's instinct, unless it's something that you are so familiar with, listen, if you're not doing refreshers on it constantly, you forget.
Are you referring kind of like to like when kids are running around with BB guns and they get shot by the police by accident?
Or even just pulling, like having something in their pocket.
Right.
Kind of both of that because, I mean, have y'all seen some of these BB guns?
Sure.
Recently?
Very realistic, but they should have an orange tip.
Yes.
Sometimes they don't.
Well, that's also easily changed, right?
It's easily remedied, yeah.
You know, you can, 3D printers can make anything possible. I'm just going to let you know.
Right. Where I was going with this is that so from a police officer's perspective, his objective is to enforce the law, and if he comes up against someone with a gun, then he needs to respond accordingly, right? For your average officer, unless they're in Chicago, maybe, for an average officer, that encounter with people having a firearm would probably be predominantly a negative situation, right? Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yes. So
Like when they encounter someone with a gun, it's most likely going to be negative. Now, if the general population, if everyone carried a sidearm or a rifle or whatever, if that was a standard thing, I think the ability to determine whether it's a genuine article, A, and B, the person's intention with that would be, because of exposure,
Yes,
would simply
also-
become easier.
yes. However, that goes to do with police training and things like that. But don't you think that there would be less police trying to take advantage of situations if,
How do you mean?
like, crooked cops, if you will,
Okay, they exist.
right? So them trying to pull some shady shit, right? Maybe less inclined to do so, if people have more knowledge of how things work, right? With
Well,
guns,
sure,
things like that,
sure.
right? So again, one of those gotcha things, right? You can't teach the stress encountered with being a police officer.
Right. Yeah.
So
Even in simulation, you still know that's a simulation.
yeah, I mean it's just one of those things until your feet are on the ground and dealing with it, you don't actually know how you're going to react. You can just prepare yourself for give yourself the most available information and educate yourself so that you are best prepared.
Right.
Not perfectly prepared, just best prepared. And
Right.
some people shouldn't be police officers. They just shouldn't. Right? That's just the simple fact. Some people shouldn't do that job. Same as some people should not be teachers.
Oh yeah.
You have to love what you do. You have to be passionate about that.
You have to
When
have the what do you call it? I don't want to say personality. You got to have the.
it has to be fire in you.
Yeah, but I'm talking about you have to have the aptitude. You have
The
to
aptitude,
have
yes.
Yeah.
You have to be able, and I don't know what the requirements are. Every
Be a
department.
teacher.
Well, no, every department, police department has their own set of requirements, though I'm sure there is some minimum that they all follow, but each one has its specifics off of the minimum, right?
I expect so.
So, I guess the department signifies what it needs best for its situation, right? What type of training they provide above else, right? And that all goes to the people that you put in charge, right? So it's a management issue at that point. So all we can do is what we can do as individuals, right? And if you want to fix something that doesn't necessarily have a solution, I think just educate people about it and let us as people generationally come to a consensus on, listen, we may decide in the future that guns are not applicable in our environment.
Right. I was actually.
But you
I was
have
actually gonna go
to-
that.
you
What
have-
if we eventually do end up in that situation where the majority of the population?
If it organically happens that way,
you think that's fine?
that's okay.
Okay.
Because
But it does,
it'll be organic and it won't be, listen, what I mean by organic is
no, I
it
get
won't
you.
be something that is forced upon people. People will still have the opportunity to have if they choose to, right? But society, they may choose not to have it in general. So it may be a 25-75 situation, right? Where only 25% of the population has it by choice,
right.
right? It does. I don't know what the numbers would be, but all of those outcomes I'm okay with, because I feel like whatever happens because we're providing the most available information to everyone and teaching it as part of, because society, we have guns in our society. So why not teach about the things that we have in our society?
Right. You're assuming though. What I said. You're assuming that move towards a gunless society was based on education. I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm talking more about the paranoia, the hyperbole that's kind of been growing up and expanding, the fear mongering, all the rest of it. What if that eventually flips the United States to like no guns? I mean, I can't imagine it happening really, but
Well,
what if? You know what I'm saying? Once you're in that situation, how do you go back to a position where you could defend yourself against a tyrannical state?
The thing that I think you have to keep in mind is we have to always keep this part of our decisions. And what I'm holding up is the Constitution, right? And the Bill of Rights, or the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, right? So you have to keep those things in mind to make those decisions, right? So the society has to be part of the equation, but also with the way that we've governed so far, this has to be part of the equation too. And that's the only way that I know. So there may be an alternative to that, but as far as what I think is, as long as you are providing people an avenue to explore that, then you're not getting rid of all the problems, no. But you're helping to alleviate some of the problems to allow us to focus on, number one, I think education about mental health.
Can I just ask you real quick?
Yes.
Not having grown up here, not having gone through a U.S. school system, what is the Bill of Rights taught? Are the amendments taught in school?
Yes, it is part of U.S. government and stuff like that. It is definitely taught.
What age would that be?
Middle school.
Middle
Well,
school.
no, actually, you start.
A little bit in elementary school,
Really?
and then it gets thicker in middle school, and then high
They
school.
basically present you with the idea of it, and they elaborate on the idea as you progress through the public schooling in Texas. I don't know about anywhere else.
Right.
Right, so I can only-
That would be interesting to me to know if this is a federal thing or it's varies state by state or.
But I think we don't actually get good information on it, though. What I mean is, it's watered down. It's very altruistic, if you will. Like they don't point out the flaws in it.
Right.
They sell you this this dream of this is perfect, right? Like it's this. Again, it may have changed since I've been in school, but
Well, I mean,
they basically present to you this is the law of the land,
Right.
and it's perfect.
They do. They make it seem like
Very
it's
patriotic,
Well,
right?
Yeah,
They teach patriotism, if you will.
pretty much.
Right.
It's like we've done no wrong.
Right.
And it's kind of like the winners of the war tell their story, and
The
we
victor's
don't
right
care.
there. Yep.
The victors write history.
So, oh dang, I had a follow up question for that. So if that is the case, people are already educated to know like the necessity for like you, because going back to you saying
I don't think it's
educating
taught
people
about
about guns.
how important it is, though.
Right.
Right. It's more just a item, just a line item. Right. This is all right. So this is you have to understand that the public education in the United States, from what I know, and from my perspective, is geared towards passing a test. Every year,
Right. All right.
the
You go to
goal-
school to pass the test.
right, for funding, for funding. The reason why they do it is to get recognized for funding.
Right. Yeah.
Higher the test scores.
They want more money. The
Right.
better your football program is, the more money you get. The better your band is, the more money you get. The more
They
stuff.
should put me in charge because I'd say you've had enough. You're getting too good.
Right. So
I'm gonna give this to somebody else.
it's taught as a line item to get better test scores, right? Do you know the answer to this question? It's not free thought, though. It's not free thought. It's they're teaching you an agenda, if you will.
It's the same. It's just programming again.
Right, but I can't speak for private schools. I can't speak for monasteries or anything like that. I only know my small town Texas education.
Sure.
Though I didn't pay attention through most of it, and most of my teachers would probably be upset that I spoke it out loud, but I did sleep in most of their classes and chewed tobacco also. I apologize to my high school teachers. I know y'all knew.
You wouldn't have been doing that if the lesson was on guns.
No, I still would have. So basically, I guess my roundabout point is, in Texas, I don't know about like in the UK and schooling and things like that. Is there any sort of like agricultural teaching or anything like that?
You talking about where I'm living?
No. Growing up, education system with where you went to school at and stuff like that.
Shit, no, not really.
High school or anything like that. Okay, so
All quite urban.
all what I'm familiar with, even in the urban areas, there is agriculture. So you have basically these country guys teaching about cows and plants, right?
I know an old ag teacher.
Right. So the thing about that is they are typically passionate about that subject matter, right?
Right.
You're not going to get an English teacher to teach ag, right? So you're not going to get a math teacher to teach, well, you could probably get them to teach philosophy, but you're not going to get a math teacher to teach English per se from English language arts standpoint,
Right.
because they can teach English on a different level.
Right.
But but what I'm saying is you're teaching your specific subject because it's something that you like, know, and care about, typically, right? Some people choose because they think it's the easiest way to make money or whatever, right? You know, whatever, right?
Yeah, let's do
So
there.
the thing is with gun education, you have to have someone. All right, so I took a hundreds education course when I was like 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Right. So what's mandatory to get a hunting license, you have to have a 100 education course, right? Well, anyways.
Really?
Yes.
Is that only if you're under 16?
No, you actually have to have a 100 education course.
Ew.
There. Anyways, moving on.
Yeah.
So I took one when I think I was 12, right? But it was taught by Texas Game and Wildlife. right? Game warden. Game
Right.
warden taught the class, right?
Someone who knows the subject and
Right.
is
Well,
passionate about it.
it's a volunteer thing, or maybe it's not a volunteer thing, but they give those classes. It's not just I could give the class, right? But I have to get training to be able to teach the class, more or less,
You
right?
have to be certified.
Right. So
to
I
stand
could
it,
teach
right.
the class. Same way with LTC, things like that.
Right.
The people that do that are typically passionate about that subject matter or want to teach that to other people, right? Is it a way to also turn some revenue? Yeah. But,
Sure.
why not try and turn something you like into something profitable?
Right.
But anyways, if you're teaching guns in the... Listen, the test question, like we had, one of the questions on there was about how far a 22 caliber discharge will travel. That's something that you had to study and know the answer to pass this freaking test, right? At 12 years old, they're testing me to know these things, right? So that I can get a card stating that I have an education on this specific thing, getting a hunting license and hunting things. It is not very detailed. Let me just make that clear. It's very general of hunting, but it's basic safety things like not stepping on dead logs, stepping over them, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Or
okay. General conduct.
no, walking around with a gun, don't step up on stuff that might be slick, things like that. That's the things that they teach you. They organize it around safety, right? So if we're offering education long term, again, this is just a crash course that takes an hour and a half or something like that to take. You go through the course and you take the test the next day. That's essentially what it is, right?
On yours, like I had something different. I learned in high school when I was in all my ag classes. The first 2 weeks in our ag classes, my teachers just taught us about gun safety,
Huh.
and so it was 2 weeks of education.
But it probably wasn't part of the curriculum. It's just something that they chose to teach about because of, again, they felt it was important. Right? Because ag class doesn't have a curriculum set to follow to take a test at the end of the year. Right? So they are actually more free to teach, I guess, more or less what they want in regards to the subject in which they're teaching. So if
Okay,
you're
so-
teaching about cows, you can
Right.
have a little bit of liberty with the cow teaching.
Oh, that sounds wrong in some way, but
And also, you can use high schoolers for free labor to build fences,
Yeah,
trailers,
yeah.
barbecue pits.
that's what I was saying earlier. Make the kids work.
Well, anyways, I did develop a passion for doing those things because of being exposed to them in high school.
Right.
Right? Again, the teacher let us do stuff that was just experimental, if you will. Like having us weld 2 pieces of metal together and then having somebody get a hammer and try and break the weld. Right? Putting it in a vise and trying to break the weld, right? Seeing how much it could take. So, again, because there was no set test that they had to teach to, I was able to learn about something, not in the general sense of education, but like, oh, cool, like this is how strong this is, right? It's giving a hands-on example of like what you're actually doing,
Right.
right? You get a full spectrum of what it is. And I think if you give a long-term education to something like guns, I think you have a better outcome, and people, number one, are going to be more passionate about it. Therefore, there's going to be more education available.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So ultimately, you essentially, and also think about the type of advancements you may have if you do have more people, like the same thing with computer coding and things like that. The more people that are interested in it, the faster it grows. Because now coding has gotten to a point to where people like me can actually do it because they've made the languages so simple that I should be able to do general coding just by clicking buttons.
Right. Right. Functions.
More or less, right? So it's
So, but how does that? How does all this tie into then? Like, what you're talking about is kind of like the country living education. You know, I mean, I don't know how relevant this would be to people living in cities. You know, you see what I'm saying? Because you have to justify your curriculum. As a school, as educators, they have to justify what they're teaching, expenditures, budgets, blah blah blah. So how would you? You see what I'm saying? Would it?
yes.
Would
Well, okay. Well, what I'm suggesting is that you offer at least a minimal. Yeah, I got that too. At least a minimal understanding to what it is, right? Maybe it's not something that is specific to a long-term education, but I think initially it has to be part of the curriculum, right? But once you get to a choice of choosing your electives, if you will, it could be an elective type thing, right? It's an elective class like art or something like that, or athletics or whatever, or just something of the sort. Okay, so but again, if it being part of education, I don't know the full detail of how it would work in the public schooling system as it exists currently, because I do think there's changes needing to happen with that.
Sure.
But I think on a basis of how things currently exist, that's my best idea that I've come up with out of the box. With how does it fully work out? I don't know. But do I think it's worth a shot? I think more people talking about it, again, more people interested in it, the faster something happens with it, the faster it evolves, right?
Again,
So
I think
again,
it's very interesting, because I think what you're saying is eventually is a necessity for a country to. I think for a country to have anything,
you have
as
to
common
embrace.
use,
You have to embrace it.
you have to embrace it, right?
Yes.
So,
Listen, it's like trying to. This is probably a poor example, but trying to ban the internet, right? Right. People are going to have access to it. You know what I'm saying? So embrace it. Make it part of society.
right,
Teach about it.
right.
Now schools are offering laptops and things like that. And I actually saw an article about a school actually going back to papers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, that's a whole different thing. But anyways, that's my shorthand solution to what I think may be progress towards a solution. It's not full term.
I think it's definitely
Right. I think it's something that people should talk about. I think it should be brought up more. And I think people should have an open-minded conversation, because I don't think the people that want guns gone are wrong. I don't. I want to make that clear. I just think that there's a better use for that passion if you look at it from a different perspective, maybe.
I would say from an ideological point of view, the people who there to be no guns, yes. From a practical point of view, the people who want there to be no guns, no.
I think they're probably naive. But again, what I want to be wrong on that. I want to be wrong on that, because I want somebody to give me a reason to why I should want guns gone. You know what I mean? Like, give me a counter argument, because I don't actually. The counter arguments that I've heard or that I've been met with, to me, they're null and void once you start talking about personal feelings, right? Because I'm trying to look at it as a perspective of a whole.
Right.
And I'm trying to, do I think that that's what will fix everyone? No. But I do that myself. I teach my children about the things that I think are important, right? But not everybody knows what I know. Not everybody has the background that I have, right? My kids are lucky in that regard, that it's not going to be foreign to them, right? It's going to be something that we go outdoors, we hunt, fish, stuff like that, right? So because of those things, they're going to be exposed to a lot of that stuff. So therefore, they'll have a better understanding of how it works, right? They may not be gurus at it, but they'll also have a basic understanding of it. And if somebody says, like, I take my kids camping sometimes, if they hate it, they're really going to know they hate it, right? They're going to have an opinion on it based upon their experience. They're not just going to assume they don't. Right. But I do try to make it as fun as possible. But I think it has to go with everything with gun control also, because these cartoons these kids watch and stuff like that, you could fit some stuff in there about gun control. I'm sure there's some kids' cartoons about gun control. And if there's not, somebody please make one.
Yeah, bring back G.I. Joe PSA. Don't play with guns, kids.
Yeah. Anyways, you got anything else to add to any of that, man?
I think we did good. I want to see this education happen. I want to see this education come over the fear peak, because I think that's what it's going to take, is enough people to be educated to get over that fear barrier, and then
education sometimes gets rid of fear. Sometimes it does.
And
but
sometimes it can be used to create fear.
Well, however, but is that fear necessarily a bad thing? Because I have a respectful fear of guns. Right. I fear them because I know what they're capable of. So I do have a fear of guns. I'm scared to death of guns when I'm not the one in control of it.
Yeah.
Because I know how I feel about it, right? So not everybody has the same feelings, but I I don't really know where I was going with that, but I have.
No, it's about education because you're educated to the point where you are confident to control this item.
But I don't trust other people are, and I told
And
someone the
people
other
who
day,
aren't
I
wouldn't
trust
have that confidence.
I trust my 11-year-old with a firearm more than I trust most grown men because I know what I've taught him,
And you know him.
and I know him, and he's provided like feedback or he's shown those things. You know, he follows my rules, if you will. So because of that, I trust him. If I tell him to go put my gun up, I trust him, right? I wouldn't do that with my 5-year-old, but because he hasn't exhibited, the ability to do that.
Right.
It's a little bit at a time. It's a little bit at a time. You can't give somebody a crash course at 18 and say, "Hey, you're figure it out." They've already lived a life to where they've been sheltered from guns, if you will.
Right.
So now they have a fear of guns with no information. They don't know anything about guns at all. They just know that guns kill people. That's all they know because that's all they know. You got to get rid of that.
I think we're definitely going to have to come back to this gun thing because there was a lot of other things I wanted to bring in, and it's just, for instance,
We'll do a
control.
We'll do a
and
follow
all
up.
that
We'll
stuff.
do a follow up episode pertaining to gun control pretty quickly. And if you guys want to hear it sooner than later, let us know.
Right. Right.
But this is Daniel the Wizard with the Driftwood Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Okay, David signing off.